Jaguars looking to win their 5th straight home game and in the process essentially kill any playoff chances for the Houston Texans. Hey, how are you folks? Jason Horowitz. Glad to be with you here on the NFL Preview Show presented by Tyson Anytizers. And for the Texans and the Jaguars, both teams coming off very disappointing losses in Week 12. Let's bring in NFL.com's Pat Kirwan to break this down. And Pat, when you talk about both of these teams, are you looking at, in your eyes, playoff contenders at all, or are you talking about teams that are going to get to around 8-8 and call it a season?
Well, I do think that the Texans are heading in that direction. But if the Jaguars win, they're in the mix, obviously. They'd be 7-5. But if you ask me if they're going to make it, I don't think either one will make it to the playoffs. I think Denver and Pittsburgh will make it. Nonetheless, if Jacksonville wins, then we're talking about them next week and the week after.
All right, let's talk about Jacksonville right now, though, and how they do that, because awful performance last week in terms of scoring in the red zone when they went to San Francisco. 4 trips, just 3 points. When they played Houston earlier this season, 3 Maurice Jones-Drew touchdowns, and they kind of got away from the run last week. Is that the game plan again this week? Pound MJD.
Well, they want to pound Maurice Jones-Drew every chance they can. The good news for Jacksonville is they won a game 2 weeks ago when he was corralled and contained to under 3 yards a carry, and David Garrard stepped up, and so they showed us they can win that way. But they would prefer to try to do this with the run game.
What about David Garrard here against the secondary? I mean, because, you know, the first game, again, it was all about Maurice Jones-Drew, and the Texans gave up 120 yards to him, 3 rushing touchdowns. Garrard did not have a passing touchdown in that ballgame. So what does he have to do here? Because you hate the word manage the offense, but that's what keeps getting thrown around.
Well, it does get thrown around, but David Garrard's better than a manager of the game. He's not a great player, and he's not an elite player. His own head coach said that to me. But he's better than a guy who just hands off and occasionally throws a check down. He's got Michael Sims-Walker and Torrey Holt. They have 93 catches between them, and so there is a vertical passing game. And because of Maurice Jones-Drew, the bootleg pass, and that's where David Garrard will shine. Get outside the pocket. He's a big physical kid. He can run with the ball, too. That's their passing game. It's a little bit more like a college passing game, but it is effective for them.
Pat, I asked you last week about all the heartbreakers and how it eventually takes its toll on teams. And now you can add another one to that because they blew a 17-0 first-half lead to the Colts, and the Texans are now, instead of being 5-3, which is where they were 4 weeks ago, they're 5-6 and staring another losing season, or at best an 8-8 season, in the face. How does that take a toll in the locker room?
Well, it's taking its toll in the locker room. I talked to Eric Winston yesterday, the starting right tackle for the Texans. And you know where their emotion level is? It's at angry. It's not at frustration. It's not at sad. It's not at melancholy. It's angry. They are a very, very mad football team because they've seen too many games get away, whether it was those missed field goals or the situation where they couldn't close out a game with a big play. They've got really a chance to look at themselves and reflect back on 6 losses by 1 score. Even if they just won half of those, they'd be really deep into this playoff hunt. But I sympathize with them because I was in a division with Dan Marino and Jim Kelly, and if you can't get the big quarterback down on the ground, you're not going to win. And that's what happened with Peyton Manning. And then if you can't get rid of that stuff, Jason, emotionally, it carries over to the next week. And I suspect that's where it is for Houston.
Yeah, and that's a big issue. And one of those emotional losses was to the Jaguars. When they fumbled going into the end zone, Chris Brown dropped it at the 1-yard line. Jaguars recovered. It was a touchback, and the game was over. So revenge week here for Houston, taking on that anger on Jacksonville. But do you think the Jaguars win?
Well, you know, no Rasheed Mathis for Jacksonville, and that provides the opportunity for Andre Johnson to have a big game. I think that the Houston Texans will go in there, and they're not going to lose this game, mainly because of what happened last time and how they lost, and that I saw that and felt the emotion, anger from that football team. I say the Houston Texans go in and win this football game 24-21.
All right, we'll see how it all plays out. They lost the last one 31-24. Pat, we'll see you back here in New York next week.
Take care, my friend.
All right, folks, for more on this game, stay with CBSSports.com. It's a 1 p.m. Eastern kick on CBS. That'll do it for the NFL Preview Show presented by Tyson Anytizers, the meaty good man snack. For Pat Kirwan, I'm Jason Horowitz. Take care, folks.